Hello Visioneers, and welcome to Small Business Celebration. We're starting a brand new series of businesses that are coming out of this recession and doing it successfully. And our guest this week, well, she may be autonomous here at the farm, but she's definitely not alone. This is Small Business Celebration. Join us as we learn from successful business owners and successful business leaders about who they are, from where their business has grown, what they have learned, and where their successful business is going. I'm your host, Michael I. Roberts, and we're going to learn something that you can use today to grow a strong and profitable business. Hello Visioneers, and welcome to Small Business Celebration. And our guest today is Meredith Bell, the owner of Autonomy Farms. Welcome to Small Business Celebration.
Thank you so much.
For Visioneers who don't know who you are you, and what is it that you do?
So my name is Meredith Bell. I am the owner of Autonomy Farms, and we're a small local organic farm located outside of Bakersfield, California.
For Visioneers who may recall, we had a guest a few weeks ago by the name of Jessica Pounds. She's the owner of Moog Creamery, and I've said this off camera on more than one occasion that the most interesting conversations happen when the camera is turned off. And one of those conversations that Jessica had for us was the very interesting story about her beef supplier and how that revolutionized not only Moog Creamery's business but also the talents of a fledgling farmer, and that farmer is our guest today. Yeah. Tell Visioneer Nation how you became the vendor for Moog Creamery, and then how all that just escalated from there.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. So my background actually isn't in farming. I didn't grow up in farming. And so I actually did sales and marketing in the food and beverage industry. And I did that for about 10 years and got kind of jaded or burnt out, for lack of a better term, and knew I wanted to do something different, knew I wanted to touch people and inspire people through food. I just didn't really know what that meant and in what context. And eventually, kind of found my way and my path through farming. So when I started the farm, I was very adamant that I was only going to sell to restaurants because that was my background, that's what I was familiar with. And I knew that there was the volume that you could create with, with the products that we had in Bakersfield. There wasn't a huge supply of it. Right. So I immediately, one of the first restaurants I hit up was Moog Creamery. And that was because, I knew the owners were younger. It was a newer restaurant that they were also trying to make a change in Bakersfield. So, at that time, it was nearly 6 years ago, Bakersfield still really only had a lot of chain restaurants. I mean, we obviously have like our small mom and pops, but we didn't have any farm to table restaurants. And Jessica was starting to really create that trend here. And so automatically that was my beeline, like, go to Jessica.
She's the ideal client.
She's the ideal client. Yeah, I mean, and we knew each other from a long time before, and our moms knew each other. And so I went out to her, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been looking for. This is exactly what we've needed." And then she told me their demand, and I was like,
and there was the problem.
Yeah, I mean, and I think any small business, when you're starting, you have all these, you're super eager and you're all gung ho and you're like, yeah, we can do it.
Sure.
And then you get into it and you're like, oh wait, maybe I can't do that. Maybe I can't supply that much meat for what their demand is.
And you couldn't at the time.
I couldn't. Yeah, there was no way.
Right.
But we found a way that she was able to support me and the products that we had to say, okay, let's put on specials. Let's run weekly specials, and let's do, these like flights and bites menus. So she was able to incorporate our products without me not having anything else to be able to sell to anyone else.
And you'll notice, Visioneer Nation, we are here on the farm for Autonomy Farms. And so if you hear chickens and geese and turkeys clucking around, yes, we are here on the farm. But that was the key, that's how all this got started.
Yeah.
Was because of Jessica and Moog Creamery.
So much, I think, of any brand or business is finding people that have, or finding other corporations that have their own brand that support you, because it adds credibility.
Right.
So that was automatically what was a huge turning point for us locally here in Bakersfield was that, well, if Jessica from Moo likes her product, like I should really try it, you know,
Right,
and
sure.
in her own right, like she probably would say she's not, but she's definitely an influencer.
Sure.
And so when you have an influencer, you know, supporting somebody else, that obviously helps build up, you know, our product.
But having one customer isn't enough.
No, yeah.
You got to the point where there were only so many restaurants that you could supply to, and then this little pesky recession came along. What happened?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I at one point I got to a time where I had realized that I couldn't sustain the business just on restaurant sales alone.
Right.
That they were great because of the volume, but you also have to sell things at a lower margin. So we were losing a lot of that margin. And so I, you know, started farmers markets. I started a little bit of online sales, a little bit of deliveries, which I didn't love doing.
Right.
But I had diversified the business and diversified my revenue streams. And so when the recession hit and all of the restaurants closed, I immediately lost almost half of my revenue.
Wow.
And I was like a deer in headlights, you
Sure,
know,
how
like
am I gonna make
automatically.
payroll and
Yeah,
exactly,
like
Right.
so many people. And all of a sudden, before I knew it, all of the online sales took off. So all of the shipping orders, the deliveries, and basically all of the business that I'd lost from the restaurant automatically just shifted directly to consumer base, which, mind you, is way harder, like way harder.
Sure.
You know, I mean, just imagine like when you're selling cases of products to restaurants and you're interacting with one person and it's 10 cases of a product and they're considered pars, right? So they get the same order every single week.
Right.
There's very, very minimal communication.
Right.
Whereas,
and it's easy.
And it's easy. Well, I mean, like once you get it going,
Right.
it's very easy. And depending on the chef and the restaurateur, it's very easy.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, with you know, direct sales to consumers, it's harder. And you know, part of our business model is recognizing that people support, you know, small local farms because it's emotional for them, whether it's because of their health or because of their family or because they're worried about the environment or whatever it is. It's an emotional decision.
Right.
So inevitably when they're talking to you, that emotion comes through. And so what we really saw at the beginning of the recession was people were already emotional about their food, then they were emotional because of everything else.
Right.
And we felt a lot of that emotion. And so, you know, our stress levels obviously skyrocketed because we took on a lot of that stress. Like, and I think a lot of it's just trying not to disappoint people.
Right.
And also, you know, from a business standpoint, being like, how can I not mess this up? Like, I have this amazing, incredible opportunity in front of me right now that I have all these customers that have never shopped from a local farm, have never bought meat online, have never had any meat shipped to them.
Doesn't all meat come in a styrofoam tin that you get from the grocery store?
Right. I mean, it's literally those. I mean, it was so many of those conversations, and so much of it in the beginning was the education. And so those first couple of months was hard. You know, and a lot of it is so much time and energy spent with one customer.
Right.
And so, you know, once you get people educated and they kind of understand the process, then it gets a lot easier.
Sure.
But when all of a sudden you have, you know, I mean, there was literally probably 4,000 customers that we just got inundated. I had to shut down the website. It was just...
It's a good problem to have.
It was and it wasn't. It didn't, I didn't love the way that it went down in the sense of like, I would have loved to have been able to give the customers the time that they deserved and the time that they needed. But between, you know, just us not having the staff and quite frankly, not having the product, you know, like I am still small. So like when you go from 0 to 100 overnight, you can't just produce animals that way.
Sure.
Like it doesn't work like that. So.
But you've also done something that in today's economy, we hear over and over and over again is subscription. And so many businesses have a hard time going to a subscription-based model, and there's a lot of back planning, lots of thought. It's not just something that's let's change the website and hit subscribe and it's a piece of cake. And you just mentioned that with your farm, animals don't come out of thin air. You actually have to feed and nurture and grow them, as it were.
Yep.
In a very simplistic way, how did you evolve your business into the subscription model that allows you to keep those orders going and be mindful to your customers so that you don't crash the site again, and you're able to listen and pay attention and provide a quality product for your customers.
You know, one of the things I found once, you know, the recession hit was that we had too many offerings. So I had always, you know, I mean, one of the things that I had kind of used to differentiate ourselves from, you know, where people can buy meat from a grocery store was that they can get unique cuts from us that they wouldn't be able to get from a grocery store because it's not an efficient cut. I mean, it was nice, right? Because people come back, so like, I've never heard of this cut, I've never had it, I've never seen it, or, oh my gosh, I've seen that at a restaurant, but I've never been able to find it at a grocery store. So that was one of the things that we specialized in, which was great until the pandemic happened. And then I realized by having so much variety, I was spending so much time in the freezer packing individual orders. And I think it was also really overwhelming to people. You know, like I think in general, everyone in the world was kind of spiraling, and the least amount of decisions they had to make, the easier it was. And so what I quickly realized was like, okay, I just need to create simple, basic boxes that people don't have to think about. Like they can do it once.
They get their 2 cuts of chicken, 2 cuts of meat, pork, 2 cuts of beef,
and know that they're going to have meat in their freezer and they're going to be able to feed their family. And I think at that point, and even still today, like people just don't want to make any more decisions in their life, right? So if it's one less thing to think about and it's done and it shows up on their doorstep once a month or every other month, whatever they choose, then it's there. And because it's so easy, they don't cancel, because it's just there.
There it is.
And it's things that they use. Like it's all basic items. So it's not things people are going to say, well, I don't know how to cook that, or I don't know how to use that. It's all like very standard cuts.
We're now starting to come out of the recession. And some industries are coming out of it faster than others. For a lot of people, this is the first recession they've ever been through. And so it was hard enough dealing with a recession and trying to figure out how to cut costs and that sort of thing. Coming out of a recession is equally challenging because you don't want to grow too quickly or make the wrong choices and flip the ship, as it were. What are you doing here at Autonomy Farms to help grow out of this recession and do it profitably?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I have always run the business trying not to overspend, you know, what our revenue streams are. And I think it's so easy once you start to become profitable to, the money comes in and it comes out. Like it's going, and all of a sudden you start spending money on things that you may not necessarily need, but because you have it, it just goes. And so I've always been kind of, you know, ultra aware of that. And obviously as your business grows, you do have extra expenditures. But I think one of the things that, you know, I'm focusing on most at this point is saying, like, my business was able to operate off of X amount of, you know, fixed costs and X amount of variable costs each month. And while my business may do this, those aren't going to change. And so that extra money now I can bank away instead of spending it. And so I can say, I'm not changing my variable costs. I'm not changing my fixed costs. Like, I know that I can operate with this minimal staff now and do this much revenue because I was forced to. So why would I go back to the way I operated, which may have been inefficient?
In other words, you read an Excel spreadsheet.
So.
If visioneers want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
So we do have a website, which is autonomyfarms.com. So we have our online store there. You can also shoot us an email to info@autonomyfarms. We're pretty active on social media, although I am taking a little bit of hiatus through the election, just for my own sanity. But yeah, we'll be back on social media come November. Well, at this point, who knows, but after November.
Exactly. When we come back, we're going to talk about the marketing of the farm, and we're going to talk about the marketing of the product, and more specifically, how to do it in the socially distant economy, when we come right back. Now that we've entered the fourth quarter of 2020, and the economic indicators seem to be rebounding, is your balance sheet saying otherwise? What are you going to do? Who are you going to turn to?
Turn to a real human being that has your business interests at heart. Turn to Sunbelt Business Brokers and Advisors, where a real human being will guide you with real-world expertise and a proven track record that will get your business numbers back on track. Call Sunbelt Business Brokers and Advisors at 661-323-2358 or visit them at sunbeltnetwork.com/Bakersfield-CA and get your numbers up. Call Sunbelt Business Brokers and Advisors at 661-323-2358 or visit them at sunbeltnetwork.com/Bakersfield-CA today.
We're here with Meredith Bell, the owner of Autonomy Farms, and we have a question from Visioneer Nation. Visioneer Mark asks, when building a business in an industry that is highly competitive with products that seem very similar to each other than traditional avenues through marketing and individual customer relations, what are you doing to make your business stand out?
It's a great question, and it's a hard one for sure. I think any small business owner or any business in general has to address that and has to figure out how they're going to differentiate themselves. So, for me, and what I really did was I took a step back and said, well, why are people going to choose my product? Like, what is making somebody decide that they're going to buy my product versus another product?
Right.
And like the obvious answer is, well, people need to eat, right? I'm providing food, but that's not why they're buying. They can go to the grocery store, right? So people are buying my product and supporting from me because for them, and it's an emotional decision, which we touched on earlier.
Right.
So then the key is, how do you touch into that emotion? How do you tap into that? And so, you look at somebody and say, like, is this because you've had some kind of illness, and then how can we help guide you through this process? Right. Or is it because you're expecting a baby and now you want to get really healthy, or you have children and you want to set them up for success in their life?
Right.
So I think at the end of the day, it's looking at your product or your service that you're offering, and then looking at the customer and saying, well, what is it exactly that they are looking for, or how can I fulfill that specific emotional need to them?
Give us an insight on what makes Autonomy Farms different than the meat that you can go down and get out of the cellophane wrapper at the grocery store.
Well, that's pretty, very, very different. That's not apples to apples by any means. But yeah, so much of the product that we're providing is obviously naturally raised. So organic, grass-fed, raised on pasture. And I always tell people, because of the fact that I'm not a farmer, I don't think like a farmer. I think very, unconventionally. And so everything that I do, people look at and said, well, that was the way it was done in, the early 1900s.
Right.
And, that's just not efficient. And
Right.
I'm like, well, it may not be efficient, but try my product and try your product.
Right.
And which one tastes better?
Right.
Which one makes you feel better from the standpoint of your health, from the standpoint of the environment, from, just the way it makes your body actually feel. And so when you start comparing that side by side, then people obviously, it makes it a more realistic comparison.
One of the other things about what you're doing here is, well, first of all, you're autonomous. Mm-hmm. You're going against the grain.
Yeah. And
that's ergo the name of the farm.
Yeah.
But you had also mentioned in the first segment about listening to your customer. Mm-hmm. Here we are in a different location here at Autonomy Farms, and where we're standing is in a floodplain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as you might expect, there was a flood.
Very dramatic.
But this is very key and very important, because that flood forced you to make a change and listen to your customer that proved to be very beneficial for your business. What happened?
Yeah, so I had been farming for about 2 years, had just bought this property, and literally was getting ready to harvest our very first crop, and it was completely flooded out. So I started the farm as a vegetable farm.
Oh.
And, I imagined myself, prancing through the vegetable rows and picking, the veggies out of the ground and eating them, and the basket's a bounty, like that whole deal.
Right.
And
it didn't work out that way.
It didn't work out that way at all, by any means. But yeah, when the farm flooded, I quickly realized, well, I can't just sit on this land for 6 months. I was literally under 2 to 3 feet of water.
Wow.
And it was all street runoff, and so all of my crops were gone. Then I had to go through the process of amending the soil and testing the soil to make sure that contaminants hadn't come on, food safety, kind of everything that went with it.
Sure.
And I looked at it and I was like, well, I don't have the cash because I just bought this property and went all in on my capital expenditures. So I was like, I don't have the cash sitting in the bank anymore to just ride this wave.
Right.
So I was like, well, I can start raising some more chickens. And I had done a little bit of chicken, but it wasn't by any means it was like 1% of my business.
Right. It's mostly beef at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But chickens, you can get them in 8 weeks,
Right.
you know? And so I was like, great, let me do this. And I, started kicking out chickens and, had them at farmer's market. And the next thing you know, people were like, this is the best chicken I've ever had. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not a chicken farmer, let me tell you. Like, that's not the way this goes. And so as it went on, this went on for about 2 years, and I started to have some really like high-end chefs, obviously Jessica Pounds from Moo, but, chefs that have Michelin star restaurants that are big, huge name, famous chefs that were like, this is amazing. Like, you should really do this. And again, I fought it and then finally was like, you know what am I doing? Like, I have a product that people are demanding right now, and it's not the product that I imagine myself growing or being, a farmer in, but at the end of the day, it gets me to my end goal, which was being able to connect people back to their food source. It was about 1.5 years ago that I finally decided that I was going to go all in on the chickens, and it was the best decision that I ever made. So, it not only from a standpoint made me financially sustainable from the farm and gives me the opportunity to really, invest in other things and look forward to the future.
Right.
But it also fills, my own soul and what I really wanted to do with this farm to begin with.
Sometimes listening to your customer can be a good thing.
Yeah, right. It just takes the long way around sometimes.
Exactly. One of the other things that's special about your farm here is that you started off your career, like you mentioned, not intending to be a farmer. But you started off in the marketing world. Mm-hmm. You started off doing event planning and food and beverage and marketing and sales and all that sort of thing. And the reason we're here in this part of the farm is you don't see a lot of crops growing, you don't see a lot of chickens and turkeys running around. Why is this part of the farm different than the rest of it?
So this is our event space. So this is where we actually hold weddings and events and dinners. So much of what I wanted to be able to do when I started farming was connecting people back to their food source. And to be able to do that, I wanted to provide an area where people could congregate, and I could say, come out and collect your CSAs, come out and let's do farm to table dinners. Like, let's create a community of people at the farm, because I think that's what people really miss. They miss getting together and having like-minded people around.
Right.
This was kind of my answer to that. So it's been a great asset to the farm, and I think for me it gives me the opportunity to help to continue to educate people, which is, when you're trying to introduce people to the difference of, what really like naturally raised meat is versus grocery store, having the space to be able to say, like, here it is, here's how it should be raised, here's how you vision it, here's how you imagine it, but it's the real deal here.
And if you wanted to have a wedding,
if you want to have a wedding or an event, you can do it out here.
And when the restrictions from COVID get lifted, I'm sure this space will get widely used once again.
Yep. Yeah, I'm excited for it.
When we come back, we're going to talk about how to market your business, because that is one thing Meredith has done very well at, and something we all can learn from when we come right back. Imagine you've worked, you struggled, you've toiled with your business, and then suddenly, one day, out of the blue, a flood comes in and wipes out your entire business. Well, Meredith said that I was being overly dramatic, but has this ever happened to you? Have you worked in your business so hard only to seemingly have it wiped out in a moment's notice? Well, you're not alone. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I started Small Business Celebration, is to let you know that you're not alone. And we'd love to hear your story about you overcoming struggles. So go ahead and reach out to us on social media, whether it be on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram, and let us know about your story. We want to hear from you on how you have overcome diversity to grow a strong and profitable business. We're here with Meredith Bell, the owner of Autonomy Farms. You have a very different way of getting into farming
Yeah.
than most people.
Yeah.
And there's the old saying that says in sales and marketing that you want to be one chapter ahead of your client. And you are very much in the food, beverage, sales and marketing business. Why farming?
You know, I get asked that question all the time, and sometimes I'm like, I still don't know. But no. Yeah, I mean, I love food. I have a huge passion for food. It's, you know, so much of my life revolves around it. And I'd gotten to a point in my career that I wasn't necessarily feeling fulfilled in that specific career, but knew I wanted to somehow stay involved in food. Considered going back to grad school, and actually I started to apply to some schools and talk to some different people, and they were very honest with me, which was great. And they just said, you know what, for what you're looking for and for what your passion is and even your personality, this is probably not the right path for you. And I look back on it and I think like that was probably some of the best advice I was given, because you know, I would have gone to grad school and I would have been banging my head against the wall with, you know, bureaucracy and red tape and trying to deal with paperwork and all that stuff that wouldn't have necessarily made me happy. So, you know, I kind of just said, well, if I'm not going to go to grad school and I'm not going to get into public policy or education, you know, I have my savings that I'd planned on spending on, you know, grad school. So what am I going to do? And so then I said, well, I'll just buy some land and start farming. And it was literally just as naive as that.
You can sell,
Yeah.
you can market, but you can't farm.
Right. Yeah.
You've gotten a lot better
Yeah.
in the time. But tell us about how, I mean, you went through and you knew nothing about farming. What were you doing at the beginning of this whole thing?
Yeah, I always laugh. I mean, I look back on it. I mean, I still laugh now. Like, I have a very different struggle than traditional farmers or people that have farmed their entire lives.
Right.
And they know nothing but farming. Like, it's in their blood through and through. Where I, again, didn't know anything about farming, but I knew how to run a business and I knew how to sell products and I knew how to market products. And so for me, it was, you know, I had the opposite problem. Like, because I have that background, I was really good at overselling myself in the beginning. I mean, that same conversation that I had with Jessica in the beginning, like, yeah, totally, all in. Like, I can do this.
I just have to figure out how to make it.
Yeah, you know, and I still get myself in those positions all the time where now I'm like scrambling to keep up. But, you know, it's very different in the sense of a traditional farmer, you know, or somebody that's farmed their entire life. They're amazing. I mean, they can run circles around me and they start talking about irrigation and gallons per minute from their well, and I'm like glaze over still, like, you know, I'm still at that point. But you know, but they're not necessarily always the best salespeople or the best marketers, and so they can create this incredible product, but they can't figure out how to sell it.
Right.
So, you know, it's like the thing that has kept my farm afloat, and the only reason it's here is because I've been able to create that brand and, you know, have that outlet to be able to say, like, here's my brand, here's my marketing, here's my sales efforts, and that obviously is what drives the revenue. So
stay one chapter ahead of your customer. Exactly. And that brings us to our Visioneer question, the segment. And Visioneer Alexa asks, what are good, effective, and inexpensive marketing strategies for a small business?
So, I mean, there's always the given, right, that I think you can find online with like social media or email blasts. But one of the things that I found that has been most successful to us are, because people are buying products and it's food related, people are always looking for like recipes and ideas. And so we create recipe cards where we'll have products, and you know, we kind of switch cuts seasonally, or we'll switch different things up. And when we do that, we'll say, here's a recipe, here's the card, here's everything you need from the farmer's market that you can get. So then we're supporting our other friends at the farmer's markets as well.
Nice.
And those customers take the recipe card home and it sits on their counter, or they put it on their fridge, or they do whatever with it. But the thing is that it's in their house, and so it's top of mind. And if they like the recipe because they've made it, they'll come back.
Nice.
And then they keep that recipe card. So, I mean, it's really finding anything that a customer is going to kind of keep on them or in eyesight or in reach, where it has your brand, it has, you know, your logo, so that you're always staying top of mind.
One of the things you're also very good at is reading people. And that's a natural talent some of us don't have. Some of us, people skills are something that we've learned out of a book, and we've learned the hard way through trial and error. Well, first of all, what are you reading right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it's funny because one of the things I found farming is that, I tell people like I've become a hermit. I, went from a food and beverage industry where I was super social and out every night and entertaining clients and surrounded by a huge team of people that you could, go back and forth on ideas and really like brainstorm, where on a farm, you're alone 90% of a day, right?
Just you and the chickens.
Yeah. And so you're like, okay, I've got to find books and I've got to find podcasts, and you constantly are searching out different things because you have to keep your mind going and stay intellectual and be challenged. And so, one of the things that, I'm constantly reading, I always have like 6 books on my nightstand, but one of the books I think that I've read most recently that stuck with me, and I actually read it last Christmas, and I can't get it out of my mind, but it's Talking with Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. And all of his books are incredible. And I think it just really encourages me to kind of look at different situations and forces you to think outside of the box, where it's definitely uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable to think about like whether, you may accidentally, think a certain way because of the way that you're raised, even though you're not aware of it. Or you may judge a situation and think that situation because of how you would react in that situation. But just because that other person doesn't react that way, makes you kind of question their motives or their authority or whatever it is. And so I think, books like that force you to say, like, let's look at the situation,
right,
and not necessarily always the way that people are reacting. And I think that applies both to like your employees, to your consumers, to kind of your vendors, to whoever it is, to always take a step back and say, like, just because they're not reacting the way I want them to react, or because they're maybe acting a little bit different than I would, doesn't mean that they're either lying or they're telling the truth. Like, you need to look further into the situation. So
sometimes it isn't you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
What is one thing that visioneers can do today to grow a strong and profitable business?
It's literally finding 5 people that you can surround yourself by to say, how can I lean on you? How can you lean on me? How can we support each other in our business and our efforts? Having people that are honestly better than you, more successful than you, is like the best thing, right? Because it encourages you to become better. Like, don't surround yourself by people that aren't going to challenge you. Surround yourself by people that are going to challenge you.
Right.
So that's the number one advice I always give anybody starting a new business.
But the challenge with that for a lot of people is it requires you to think and feel and be uncomfortable with revealing who you are and things about your business that you may not want everybody to know about.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you overcome that? Or is it the people you choose to be around? Or how do you help find those 5 people?
Yeah. I think that brings up a whole other set of like books and vulnerability, and I'm sure there's people out there that know Brené Brown, who's another one of my favorite authors. And it's the whole saying that like you can't grow and you can't expand and you can't further develop yourself without being vulnerable. And you have to accept that vulnerability, which I honestly never did until recently, and I've come to accept it for what it is and learn that I can put myself out there and I can say, like, I may look dumb, but at the end of the day, like, whatever I'm putting myself out and whatever I'm saying to other people, they're going to offer advice, and at that point it's up to me to choose to take it or not. But until I put myself in an uncomfortable situation, then I'm just going to continue just to stay flat. Like, what's the point? Like, I don't want to be in this position for the rest of my life. Like, I want to be better. So.
Right. Well, if visioneers want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
So we do have a website, of course, which is autonomyfarms.com. You can also shoot us an email to info@autonomyfarms.com, or you can find us on social media, both Facebook and Instagram, just under Autonomy Farms.
Sounds good. Well, Meredith, this has been a pleasure. Thank you very much for being on Small Business Celebration. This has been a real treat.
So great. I definitely appreciate the opportunity. So thanks.
Now that we've entered the 4th quarter of 2020 and the economic indicators seem to be rebounding, is your balance sheet saying otherwise? What are you going to do? Who are you going to turn to? Turn to a real human being that has your business interests at heart. Turn to Sunbelt Business Brokers and Advisors, where a real human being will guide you with real-world expertise and a proven track record that will get your business numbers back on track. Call Sunbelt Business Brokers and Advisors at 661-323-2358 or visit them at sunbeltnetwork.com/Bakersfield-CA and get your numbers up. Call Sunbelt Business Brokers and Advisors at 661-323-2358 or visit them at sunbeltnetwork.com/Bakersfield-CA today. Who is a visioneer? A visioneer is a business leader who is a pioneer that has vision. A visioneer is someone willing to see the world not as it is, but as it could be, and is willing to do something about it. A visioneer is ethical, smarter, faster, and leaner than the mainstream competition. A visioneer gives value first because visioneers are in the business for the long haul. Visioneers understand the difference between saving money and earning a profit. Visioneers define their destiny. Visioneers create their own luck. Visioneers surround themselves with successful, like-minded people. Visioneers are renegades who defy the mainstream competition and are ready to change the world. Are you a visioneer? Join the Visioneer Tribe with Small Business Celebration on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram today.